Hey everyone, welcome back to English Podcast 2.0. I'm so glad you're here. In today's episode, we're going to step away from the usual routine and dive into something truly inspiring. Have you ever faced a tough situation where it felt like all hope was lost? Or maybe there was a moment when you felt like giving up? Well, today's story is all about hope, perseverance, and the valuable lessons we learn when we face challenges head on. We'll hear the story of a farmer, someone who faced one of the toughest challenges of his life and found a lesson that would stay with him forever. This motivational story will remind you why it's so important not to lose hope when things get difficult. So, sit back, relax, and let this story remind you that even in the hardest of times, there's always a way forward. Let's get started with the farmer's final lesson. In a small, quiet village surrounded by rolling hills, there was a farmer who lived alone. His name was Thomas. He wasn't rich, nor did he have many luxuries in life, but he was known for his hard work and determination. He had a small piece of land that he worked on every day, growing crops to feed his community. But despite all of his efforts, things hadn't been going well for him. Year after year, the weather seemed to get worse, and his crops were failing. The rains didn't come at the right time, or sometimes there was too much rain flooding his fields. His neighbors, seeing his struggles, began to worry for him. They tried to offer help, but Thomas, being the proud and independent man he was, always turned them down. One day, as the sun set and the sky turned a soft orange, Thomas stood on his porch, looking at his fields. He was tired. He had worked harder than ever, but the land seemed to reject him. His heart was heavy with disappointment. Maybe I've just been unlucky, he thought to himself. Maybe it's time to give up. Just as he was about to turn inside, a neighbor named Samuel walked over to him. Samuel had known Thomas for many years, and he knew that the farmer was struggling. He gently asked, "Thomas, have you ever thought about looking at your situation differently?" Thomas looked at him, confused. "What do you mean, Samuel? I've tried everything. Nothing works. I'm just wasting my time." Samuel smiled softly and walked over to a tree near the farmer's field. He pointed at it and said, "See that tree? It grew here when the soil was rocky and dry. It struggled at first, just like you. But it didn't give up. It kept growing, even when the weather wasn't perfect." Thomas looked at the tree, still unsure of what Samuel was getting at. "You know," Samuel continued, "life doesn't always go the way we expect. Sometimes we face challenges that seem impossible. But if we give up, we miss the chance to grow. That tree didn't know it would survive, but it kept going. And now, look at it. It's strong, tall, and full of life." Thomas felt a spark of hope. For the first time in months, he felt a little lighter. Samuel's words stuck with him. Maybe there's still hope after all, he thought. That night, Thomas went to bed with a new sense of purpose. The next morning, he woke up early, just like always. But today, something was different. He went out into his fields and began to work, not with the usual sense of defeat, but with a renewed sense of hope. Every task seemed a little easier, every action a little more meaningful. Over the next few months, Thomas didn't see instant results, but he began to notice small changes. His soil seemed a little richer, his crops were growing a little stronger. He wasn't sure if it was the rain or just the change in his approach, but he didn't stop believing. Slowly but surely, his farm started to improve. By the end of the season, Thomas had harvested the best crops he'd ever grown. They weren't perfect, but they were enough. He smiled, feeling proud of himself. But more importantly, he understood something he hadn't before. The lesson wasn't just about farming, it was about life. When you feel like giving up, when it seems like everything is falling apart, you have to remember that sometimes growth happens slowly, and the hardest times bring the most valuable lessons. Thomas had learned to never lose hope, no matter how difficult the situation might seem. So, What can we learn from Thomas's story? It's simple. Don't lose hope. Life will throw challenges our way, and it may seem impossible at times. But those who keep going, even when things seem tough, are the ones who find success in the end. It might not come immediately, but the effort, the persistence, and the belief that something better is ahead, these are the things that truly matter. Thomas's story reminds us that no matter how hard things get, there's always a way forward. Just like that tree, you might feel like giving up, but if you keep pushing, you will grow stronger and find success. Keep going, stay hopeful, and remember that even the hardest times can bring the most important lessons.